Hi Lori, this is Rebecca with your assignment 2 Still Life Critique. So there's some interesting stuff going on in this image. I really love this texture that you added to this vase. It is awesome. It's so neat. And this interesting effect that you applied for the wallpaper to give it, to fill in some space and give it some depth and texture was a nice idea. There's just some areas of improvement here. I'm happy to see some gradients in the book and that you incorporated some different fonts. That's really cool. What I would recommend with this background texture is to continue it behind the flowers. So, I can see that it didn't continue behind the flowers. In fact, it overlapped some of the flowers, and so that's kind of distracting. So move your layers around so that it falls behind the flowers. It also overlapped over your foreground, which can be confusing as well. Your foreground, the surface that everything is sitting on, didn't continue all the way to the edge here, which is fine. Maybe it's a table or a shelf that stopped there, but it doesn't look completely intentional. Also, the vase there's some white creeping in over here, like the vase didn't continue to the edge, and that also appears unintentional and makes it just look a little bit unfinished. There's some areas that we could have added some more shadows, and that would have helped everything. First of all, this book, kind of if you had a shadow coming down, it would ground it to the surface as well as a shadow from the vase. And some shadows and highlights using gradients for each of the petals in the flowers would have really helped to make that appear more three-dimensional. This stem is sticking out of the side of the vase a little bit. These appear to be overlapping the front of the vase. So, changing your layers around so that it appears to be inside the vase instead of in front of the vase would help that as well. If this is some sort of a plaque or sign on the wall, it's not really reading that way right now because it's so flat and there's no drop shadow underneath it, which if it was on a wall, there would be a drop shadow. So that's another area that a shadow would be helpful. The composition could be improved a little bit. It just feels very empty in the middle because everything is kind of, it's not feeling very balanced. I don't know if this vase could move over a little bit more or something, the scale just seems to be a little bit off as well. Like the size of this book versus this vase versus the flowers. Maybe this is more in the foreground and this is more in the background. That's kind of hard to read because there's no highlight or gradient on the shelf itself to give that, to show some dimension and depth there. So there's just, some more spots that could use more gradients, more shadows, and where you could adjust your layers, rearrange your layers so that things fall behind other things where they're supposed to fall.